So, hi everybody, my name is Vlad Dumitrescu, and let's start with the problems first. You had technical issues with my laptop, so I cannot show everything I had in mind, and the slides will be a bit screwed up, but I'll try to improvise, so bear with me a little bit. So, let's do this. So I'm working at a company that's called HiQ here in Sweden, with a consultancy company, and one of the top ones, and it's not just me saying that. And I've been on assignment at Ericsson's like since 2004, and a little bit before that even, actually. And I am also celebrating my 20 years of Erlang, because I discovered it right after it was released as open source. I remember downloading it in a 2400 baud modem and trying to do things. And I am the main developer and maintainer of Erlang IDE, the Eclipse plugins for Erlang. This is from 2002, and I've been doing it privately as a hobby project, and then because I was at Ericsson and they are using Erlang, of course, and they were interested and said, we want to use this as our development environment. So I got to work with it even daytime. Did more, a little less, and it was a good trip. So let's do this. I'll start a little bit about Erlang plugins, so a bit of history. If any of you was the Chaba's talk yesterday, so you probably could see it was on. It has most features. It ranked 2, but actually it should be an equal one, shared one first place. And it is partially implemented in Erlang because I don't really want to write Java, but what can I do if it's Eclipse? And actually, the biggest problem that I had was this communication between Java and Erlang, actually getting in all environments the Java and node and Erlang node to find each other. The problem is that they use different methods of getting the host name. So when I was trying to set up the distribution, not always they got to the same name. And so people saying, oh, this is not working. So there's a lot of work trying to make that work in every situation. Now, thinking back, probably I should have been using a normal TCP connection and get on with that. But it's kind of nice to be able to have some code on the Java side look like a normal Erlang process and be able to send messages to it and don't care that it's in Java. And also an administrative problem was that it's very difficult to get help because having Java and Eclipse and Erlang competence is quite rare. And yeah, I had some help, but would be nice with more of it. So that's what I thought. What can I do about this? How can I involve the Erlang community more? So let's implement all the interesting functionality in Erlang. So I get better chances to people who will say, hey, this is interesting, will help, be much more fun for me. So I had this idea, write a server and let it provide all the information that the Eclipse will need, the editor. And I did, but I didn't want to write anything from the beginning and just try to get things, I mean, squish them and drag them and put them into shape, and it got a very bad API that is both too specific to what Erlang IDE does, and is too ambitious that, yeah, it tries to do too much, and not always I could deliver on those ambitions. And then I discovered that Microsoft has something called the Language Server Protocol published. And I said, whoa, this is interesting. This is exactly what I want to do. So it was released as part of the Visual Code editor in 2015. And there's a web page where the whole documentation is located. And the whole idea is to decouple the editor functionality from the language-specific functionality. So if this server will get updates about edits, then it can compute whatever it needs to compute, definition, locations, and references, and look for documentation or whatever, bits some coins, and return it. And so you can then, in this case, use a same backend for any client or editor that implements this protocol, which is very cool. It's, yeah, use once, write once, and they use everywhere, just like we always wanted. And there are many clients and servers that are supporting this now. And the protocol has only a few methods that it implements, like find references, get documentation, describe function signature, code completion. You can interact with editor with sending them different actions that we can do. For example, if you have on a line an error, you can provide from the server different quick fixes. So, so this is like an atom, but it should be a variable. And look, you have a variable that's the same thing, but with a capital S. And you should use that. And the user just can click and get it changed. So no need to do it themselves. Regarding the implementations that are for the BEAM languages, there is, I think this was the first from Jake Becker for Elixir. I haven't checked it, so I tried it once, but I'm not an Elixir guy, actually, so I have no idea of the state of it right now. And for Erlang, there is one that is pretty recent from Pierrick Gourlin that has been writing this VS Code Erlang, which is the extension for VS Code that has more stuff to it than just the language server protocol. It has for debugging, it has a lot of useful stuff, running unit codes and things like that. A unit tests, excuse me. And then it's the Sorcerer, that is mine. And I will try to talk a little bit about it, what I was thinking when I did that. I built it from 3 layers. First, a generic LSP server that talks JSON RPC with the client and just transform this to Erlang messages and send them away. And there's automatic translation. I mean, for each message has a name, and then you think, oh, okay, I find in this callback module a method that's just say with the same name and call it. And a library that's doing the work, and the wrapper does just puts them together. And I tried to reuse my code that I've written for Erlang IDE. Partially, it does, but not very much, because I came with a different base implementation. And this is Oh, I will tell you later about that. So what's the problem with implementing parser and source code handling tool? The code that's written and edited is not the same thing as the code that you need to compile. Not the least that you have macros, and not all the macros are well defined. You can have just a comma or something like that, and then if you put that into the source code, you cannot really parse it, or you're in the middle of writing something, and maybe you start a string, and you don't finish it in your middle of the module, and then the rest of the file will become the rest of the string, because we have multi-line strings. So all these things make that it's not easy to use the regular lexer and parser for that. So you have to do better, to try to understand what the code does without really parsing it. So be very lenient with anything that's in the file. So it needs to, in order to to handle macros. So we treat them just like any function call, and then, but that means that they need to be well behaved. I mean that the value of the macros is a complete expression, so that it could be placed into source code, the call to the macro, without it being unparsable. But in case, let's see, in case it is malformed or it's a bad something, it shouldn't crash everything. It should be able to provide best of effort support anyway. And another requirement that I had was that be able to handle many files and large ones. So I don't really want to parse things every time I need something, and that because it would take minutes, and it's not what you want to have to wait for when you're writing code. So I was thinking there is something that's already doing something like that, and that's the CTags utility, which stores references to definitions of things in source files. But in our case, I would have needed more information than that, so I couldn't use the normal CTags database. So I used normal Erlang terms to store definition information, references to where the documentation is, both the edoc comments and the specifications, and maybe the URL to the documentation in the OTP Erlang libraries documentation. And when doing this, you could generate for libraries everything offline, so that when you download the library, you always get this helper files, so that when you work with it, you don't have to parse it again. So if you never edit it anyway, there's no use to be able to parse it and open all the files and the difference also between this and the xref database, that's we track every dependency. The xref is a tool that keeps track of the function calls between all the modules, and you can do all the sorts of interesting queries about that. But here we track records and macros and functions and which files you include into your modules and things like that. So this is a little example of how the database looks in a very simplified way. So you have a key that's a list of items that, so you have a hierarchical key structure. So you have a module, for example, module function defines the function in that module, or module at macro. And this is not complete. You could have even anonymous functions or the variables and everything that has a name in the source code and you can refer to, you can have it inside this database. And then there below you can store the definitions list, where is this context or the key, and a range inside the file that's for the name of the item, and the full range where the whole definition is located, and extra information, which is where the spec, if it's a function, the documentation, or whatever else things you want to store it. And then also you have references that are just the key and the location of that reference. So no demo. Oops, sorry. Because my computer doesn't work. It have been quite boring anyway. It's just me typing and so I actually wanted to skip it anyway. But I was thinking, there are other applications that could use this kind of information about the source code. And the first thing is like refactoring tools, for example. The language server protocol includes one simple refactoring, it's rename. So, of course, if you have all the definitions and all the references to some item, it's very easy to find all the places that you have to rename. But I think it would work for more advanced refactorings. And this is what I wanted to do. I'm not sure about the time, but actually show you this how to visualize the dependency is in the code base using this information. Hopefully, I have some pictures. They were not very suggestive. It's completely different experience when showing, because this is Structure 101. It's a tool that you can use to retrieve this kind of data and show it graphically and move things around. And there's a lot of things that you can see that you didn't know they were there. So I will try now to going through the images. I know they are small because they are not meant to be shown, like just for the conference papers afterwards. But I hope, you can see something. This is the structure for the Sorcerer application itself. So there are the three applications that I told you about, and inside them there are all the modules, and you can see how the dependencies goes between them. And you can also open each and every one and see every function, exactly what they call and how. And I also have for rebar. This is one simple application, and you will see here I only have the arrows up. That's because the arrows down are very many, and they don't convey too much information here. But this diagram is a so-called leveled state. No, I don't know. Level something map, where the lowest level is the things that don't call anything else, and then the things that call those are the next one and the next one. So dependencies always go down. So you have the top modules at the top, and these arrows that goes up. These are the things that do I want to? This means that there's a cyclic dependency somewhere. Because I cannot really see what it says myself there, but there's something that's from the top, the third line there, something that goes down and then it goes up, and this is circular dependencies are not good, I think, to have in a code base, because you cannot understand, cannot take one little bit of the code and understand it. You have to take everything that's included in that loop, because they belong together, they call each other, and you really don't know what happens there unless you look. So this is, let me see. Yeah, I will show you here this bunch of modules here with a lot of arrows. This is another view of that thing. So you can see exactly which one call which others, and how many dependencies, how many calls or whatever are in that. And in the tool, you can click on each and every arrow and see the details, and go to the code also. And the red lines are those that are going into the wrong direction. And you could look into the code and see, do I really want to have that? Sometimes it's okay, especially, for example, inside the module, when you have recursive calling mutual recursive functions, it's normal to have this kind of mutual dependencies. But between modules, maybe. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. I think I was looking at this, and some of these, there's only one function from one module that's creating a lot of this mess, I usually like to call. So maybe it isn't really the good place to have that function. Maybe it should be placed in another module. And this is for the OTP repository. This is all apps. I'm not sure now if it's the new one or the old one.
It's the new one, because OTP mix is in the bottom and thrown away.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, yeah. So, yeah, there's a lot of dependency, which is normal, but you see there are two places where you have this kind of circular dependency, and it's for between SSL and INETs, and then the one that I guess everybody that looked at the code knows, that use the kernel standard libs and compiler and the crypto. So it's everything that you need to get the system started. Let's see if, yeah, this is the only, I cannot really see what it says there. Well, one of them is the kernel, and the other is standard libs. And you have compiler and crypto at the top. Just to see, so you could look at it and see, is there something that's weird in that? Maybe not. And I think it's a very good way to analyze code bases. Yeah, and that was it. Yeah, because I don't have any demo here, so I will take questions.